The government published plans this week to extend shared ownership to just about everyone who takes up so-called affordable housing over the next 5 years. But there are many who are saying that the model doesn't work. Shared ownership means buying a share of a flat and paying rent for the rest. And the theory is the homeowner then will buy a bigger and bigger share over the years. That's called staircasing. But data suggests it is very rare for shared owners ever to own 100%. Deepa Mystery saw shared ownership as the only way she could afford to buy a home. She bought 75% of her two-bedroom flat in southeast London in 2010.
Shared ownership is offered to those who, as affordable housing, I suppose you could call it. And where it's offered as affordable housing, you expect that your circumstances are taken into account, but you don't expect to be stung for not being able to afford the property. So you're stung by the mortgage providers as well. You have to go to a specialist mortgage provider. You have a very small pool of mortgages and the rates are so high. Even when I first started, I was on a rate of 7.2%. That really stung me. And I've not been able to get off anything like that. And I've not been able to switch lenders either, because you are, for want of a better term, you're imprisoned. And the lowest I've been offered by my current provider has been still at around 6%.
So you're paying 6% for the 3/4 of the property you own, 3 times what many people pay for mortgages now. What do you think the future is for you then? You've got this expensive mortgage, you can't afford to buy any of the remaining 25%. What is going to happen to you?
When there is some better legislation that protects me as a leaseholder, I want to be able to sell this property. But up until then, I've only got one option, and that is to sublet the property. But that's really my only option at the moment, and I am at last resort. If this fails, we basically have to stay here. We haven't got a choice.
Has your dream of home ownership been taken away from you?
I believe I've been missold to. If I'm allowed to say that, I believe I've been missold to, because when looking at the stats, it's less than 5% of people in shared ownership are able to actually staircase the full 100%. So, this in itself just tells you it's not working. And this scheme has been running for years. I've been in it for 10 years. And once you start seeing service charges creeping up, you then realise that this is going to be impossible for you to get out of, and you won't be able to own the whole lot. And your best bet is to just sell what you've got.
Deepa Mystery. With me is Giles Peaker. He's a solicitor in the Housing and Public Law Department at Anthony Gold Solicitors. Giles Peaker, the government plans published this week are intended to make shared ownership work better. Would they help avoid the problems that have beset Deepa and, I must say, many others who've been tweeting us today about the present scheme?
I'm not sure that they would. What the government is proposing is 3 things. First, to reduce the entry share from current 25% to 10%, to enable people to buy smaller shares through staircasing. So rather than having to get a minimum of 10%, it could be 5% or indeed 1% over 15 years. And finally, to restrict the maintenance costs for the building so that they would be payable by the housing association rather than the shared ownership lessee for the first 10 years.
So those sound like improvements, but would they solve the problems that Deepa and others are having with the present scheme?
No, this is for new shared ownership only, and I'm not sure that they are improvements. Firstly, if we look at the 10% entry level, the government themselves note that it's unlikely that current mortgage lenders would be particularly interested in that, and that people might well end up using what they call alternate finance.
Or even at the high rates of mortgages that Deepa was telling us about, 6% and more.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, 10% is a relatively small share of the property.
Let me bring in Amy Nettleton. She chairs the Shared Ownership Steering Group for the National Housing Federation, an association of housing associations, and she's a director at Astor Group as well. Amy Nettleton, Deepa says she was missold, she's trapped. What's your solution for her?
Morning, everybody. I just one thing I would like to set out before we kind of start, and I'm really sorry to hear that Deepa feels that she is trapped, but shared ownership is much broader than just flats and leasehold. Shared ownership does extend to houses as well, so we do need to make sure that is conveyed as well.
Yes, there are some houses, and one of the tweets I've had that likes shared ownership was a house, and he bought the whole lot, so he's very pleased.
Well, there's quite a lot of houses, and I think if we're going to have the debate, we need to have the overall debate, just to put it into context. And I think around Deepa being missold the flat, I wouldn't, and I can't comment on those circumstances. But what I can say of the story that she tells is that her interest rate seems very high. And to me, that isn't high just because it's shared ownership. Shared ownership there's this misconception that there aren't a lot of lenders in the space, and there are. We are currently operating with around 15 mainstream lenders, and just interest rates move all the time. So, I'm no broker, and I would advise Deepa to speak to a specialist shared ownership broker. But at the moment, a 90% loan to value mortgage on the open market, you can get a 3.99%. The same kind of product is 3.49% on shared ownership. So to just convey that it's just high interest rates on shared ownership, that's incorrect.
And what sort of rate, sorry to interrupt, but what sort of rates would you expect people would get from alternative lenders for these much, much smaller shares that the government wants them to be able to buy?
Why would they be alternative lenders?
Well, that's what the government says. It's in the paper. It's not me.
Yeah, no, they are engaging with the mainstream lenders around their 10% proposition in the technical consultation, and it will be down to those lenders to see whether they have the appetite. Shared ownership doesn't have any alternative lenders. We have lenders within the space that operate on the fringes, but their interest rates are still very comparable. And as I say, I am no advisor to expand on that, but I do think Deepa does need to speak to a specialist broker.
Okay. Let me ask you about what you call staircasing, which is buying a bit more. So you start with 10%. In the new scheme, you'll be able to buy 1% for 15 years. At the end of that 15 years, you'll own a quarter of the property. Where do you go from there?
Well, I think what we need to recognise is the government that's seeing the importance of shared ownership that we haven't ever really seen before. So the reason they've brought in this incremental staircasing is because one of the criticisms around shared ownership was that the bigger shares were unaffordable. So therefore, opening up a scheme that allows people to buy smaller shares at those opportune moments gives them the ability to be able to increase their stake or share.
Giles Peaker.
Well, I think the whole point about the 1% shares increase is it's completely pointless. There's only three reasons to increase your share. One is to reduce the rent that you pay on the remaining share of the property. Another is to increase what will be your return on the equity when you sell. And the third is you are serious about getting to 100% and buying the property outright, which House of Commons report said only 2.3% of shared ownership people managed in 2018, 2019. But increasing in 1% doesn't achieve any of that. It's actually going to cost you more for the 1% than you're likely to see in any return on the equity. It's not going to reduce the rent in any significant amount. And as you say, if it takes you 15 years to get to 25%, it's not going to help you get to 100%.
OK, I'm going to ask you both to do something very difficult now. This is a consultation paper. In a word, Giles, what word will you say to them about this plan?
3 words, don't do it.
And Amy Nettleton?
I think we're just ready to work with them to refine the model to better suit our customers moving forward.
OK, thanks very much. And you can hear more about shared ownership in The Home I Can't Afford on Panorama on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. on BBC One. If you want to contribute to the consultation, you better be quick. It closes on the 19th of December, and there's a link to it on the Moneybox website, and we'll be tweeting that link at Moneybox later.